Oh, I believe in yesterday. Come together right now. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Here comes the sun.
Y'all, the Beatles were that group. Smooth vocals, a global fan base, and hit after hit. Legends, no doubt. Their music was unstoppable. We ate it up. But then the cracks started to show. Tensions rose, egos clashed, and one by one, they went their own way.
And who knows who broke? Everyone has a theory.
I know.
Who broke it up?
John.
John did.
Yeah.
And he tried to pin it all on you.
But not before tragedy struck. John Lennon, the brain behind the Beatles, was gunned down in cold blood. And just like that, everything changed.
John came out and he looked at me and I think he recognized, here's the fella.
This story, it's not just music history. It's fame, fallout, and heartbreak. So buckle up, because once we peel back the layers, you're gonna be shook.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Let me take you back to 1957 Liverpool, where it all began with two young dreamers, John Lennon, born on October 9, 1940, and Paul McCartney, born on 18 June 1942. Self-taught musicians fueled by a fierce love for American rock and roll, they teamed up, sparking a fire that would soon engulf the world. By the end of that year, they'd pulled in George Harrison, born on 25th February 1943, a lead guitarist.
You and John became buddies, and then you joined his band. Was that the beginning of it?
Yeah.
And then George was a friend of yours?
George was my buddy.
Yeah.
They stumbled through skiffle music and experimented with names, from the Quarrymen to the Silver Beatles, before finally settling on the Beatles. Adding drummer Pete Best, they dove headfirst into Liverpool's buzzing beat music scene and then into the shadowy, rowdy clubs of Hamburg, West Germany, where sailors craved the rebellious sounds of American rock as a soundtrack to their wild nights. Then came Brian Epstein, a local record store manager who spotted raw gold and refused to let it slip away. With relentless passion, he shopped the band's demos to every major label until Parlophone, a tiny EMI offshoot, gave them a shot. Then came George Martin, a classically trained maestro who saw beyond the chaos. He cleaned up the lineup with the polished Ringo Starr, born on July 7, 1940, on drums, and transformed their slow second single, Please Please Me, into a fast, electrifying hit.
And one night, Pete couldn't do it, and Ringo sat in for him, and we all just went,
By 1963, the Beatles weren't just a band, they were a movement. Their original songs and explosive covers filled British airwaves, captivating fans of every age and class. When they finally hit TV screens, the frenzy exploded. The British press coined it Beatlemania, a craze unlike anything before. Early 1964, the storm hit America. Appearances on TV sent shockwaves that sparked the British invasion, flooding the US with bands desperate to capture just a fraction of the Beatles' raw energy and unstoppable charisma. Beatlemania was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. By the summer of 1964, when the Beatles burst onto the big screen with A Hard Day's Night, their impact was undeniable, rippling across the globe. Thousands of young people copied their signature long hair, sharp wit, and reckless charm. They weren't just a band, they were a cultural tidal wave. Their influence even reached the halls of power. In 1965, the British Prime Minister Harold Wilson recommended all four Beatles for the Member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE, a royal honor that caused a brief uproar among veterans who felt it cheapened the award.
Well, gentlemen, first of all, many congratulations on your MBE. The whole country seems very delighted indeed, but how do you feel about it, Paul?
I'm glad everyone's delighted.
But the Beatles weren't just pop stars. They were revolutionaries, reshaping society.
It's nice to have, and it doesn't make you more respectable or anything, I don't think. Maybe other people think it does. Doesn't make me any more respectable. I'm still a scruff.
This frenzy fueled John and Lennon's confidence, igniting a creative explosion unlike anything rock had ever seen before. Between 1965 and 1967, their music evolved at a dizzying pace. Growing more complex, layered, and daring, they shifted from tender chamber pop like Yesterday to mysterious folk tales like Norwegian Wood.
Or should I say, she once had me.
By 1966, their sound exploded into psychedelic rock with Tomorrow Never Knows, lyrics inspired by Timothy Leary's The Psychedelic Experience, plunging listeners into a mind-bending trip. And then came Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, a wild carnival of sound with Lennon's surreal stream of consciousness lyrics and George Martin's genius production. Martin stitched together random snippets of steam organ recordings, creating a sonic circus that pushed the limits of studio magic. This wasn't just music, it was a bold new art form, crafted in the studio and forever changing the game.
So you did 4 songs in a day, so it was, well, that was all we knew. It was required, so we did it.
In 1966, the Beatles stunned the world by stepping away from live performances, choosing instead to dive deep into the boundless possibilities of the recording studio. This wasn't just a retreat, it was the dawn of a new era. A year later, in June 1967, everything reached a fever pitch with the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The album exploded onto the scene, embraced by young fans worldwide as undeniable proof not just of the Beatles' genius, but of a shimmering utopia on the horizon. They weren't just a band anymore, they were the living, breathing embodiment of a rebellious counterculture, a wild, unchained celebration of pleasure, freedom, and fearless experimentation with music and with life itself. They turned their idols, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Elvis Presley, and the rest, into legends whose echoes shaped their sound. But the Beatles took it further. Their songwriting stretched the limits of what rock could be. Their harmonies wove intricate tapestries of sound. Their arrangements were subtle yet bold, and George Martin's production wizardry added layers of magic. At the heart of it all, Ringo Starr's steady, no-nonsense drumming kept the pulse pounding. By 1968, the world was shaking with student protests from Mexico City to Paris, and the Beatles' role as the unspoken leaders of youth culture began to slip away. Still, they pressed on, recording and releasing music that kept them at the peak of popularity. They launched Apple Records in 1968.
It's a company we're setting up which involves records, films, electronics, which make records and films work.
A bold move meant to foster creative freedom, but instead it bred chaos and commercial disaster, save to the Beatles' own work. Yet, even as turmoil swirled around them, albums like Abbey Road soared, becoming some of their most beloved and best-selling masterpieces. Tensions inside the band were spiraling out of control. The pressure of being the voice of a generation was crushing, and old friendships began to crumble. Lennon and McCartney, once the inseparable heart of the Beatles, now found themselves locked in bitter arguments, trading accusations that cut deep.
There was a meeting where John came in and said, "Hey guys, I'm leaving the group."
Money, millions of dollars, only made the rift worse, shattering the idyllic image of carefree rock stars. Suddenly, these legends were no longer just icons of youth rebellion, they were pampered moguls, caught in their own trap. By the spring of 1970, it was over. The Beatles officially broke up.
George, only a brief document or 2 left.
In the years that followed, each member took his own path. Lennon's solo work with Yoko Ono was raw, biting, and controversial. McCartney formed Wings, churning out hits that dominated the charts throughout the 70s.
With Wings, we tried to keep away from sort of very Beatle-y sounding things, you know, like riffs and songs and sort of stuff in the Beatles.
Starr and Harrison found solo success too, though quieter in the spotlight. But the darkest blow came in 1980. Lennon was shot dead outside the Dakota apartment building in New York City. A fan turned stalker, ending a legend's life in cold blood.
John Lennon can't be dead.
4 cops pulled John Lennon out and put him into the back of a police car, and he was bleeding from his mouth.
The world was stunned, grieving a loss that felt impossible to bear.
He emptied the Charter Arms .38 caliber gun that he had with him and shot John Lennon.
Lennon's memory lives on in Strawberry Fields, the peaceful section of Central Park dedicated to him, lovingly designed by Yoko Ono.
You couldn't take it in, and I couldn't take it in. I just know, just for days, you just couldn't think that he was gone.
The surviving Beatles kept making music, though the magic was never quite the same. McCartney stayed prolific, releasing pop albums, diving into classical compositions like Liverpool Oratorio and Standing Stone, and even earning a knighthood from Queen Elizabeth II in 1997.
I was feeling pretty cheeky by now. I'm thinking, I'm getting quite at home here. So I said to her, as she shook her hand, we've got to stop meeting like this. And she went, what?
Starr stayed active too, touring annually with his all-star band, playing timeless rock hits alongside a rotating cast of legends. Harrison, meanwhile, stepped back for much of the 80s and 90s, focusing on producing films. He joined the supergroup Traveling Wilburys with Bob Dylan and others, but tragedy struck again when he survived a knife attack in 1999, only to lose his battle with throat cancer 2 years later. In the early 90s, a flicker of the old magic returned when McCartney, Harrison, and Starr added their voices to 2 unreleased Lennon tracks, sparking a new wave of Beatlemania.
It was very emotional at the beginning because John says, that'd be great for you, Ringo. And I called Paul and asked him, I said, hey, it's a John song. Will you play on it? He said, sure.
This led to the massive Beatles anthology project in the mid-90s. 6 CDs and a 10-hour documentary that took fans deep behind the scenes of the band's history. And in 2000, the compilation One stormed the charts worldwide, reminding everyone that the Beatles legend was far from over. The electric afterglow of Beatlemania may have faded, but the legacy, the raw symbol of a turbulent youth revolution, was forever etched into history. In 1988, the Beatles were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, cementing their place among music's immortals. One by one, Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starr were honored individually, their legendary status unquestioned.
I'd like to thank Ahmet, Jan, and the Board of Directors of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for bestowing this honor to my late husband, John Lennon. Thank you.
Then, in September 2009, a digital renaissance hit. The Beatles' entire catalog was meticulously remastered and re-released, flooding the world with fresh, vibrant sound. Fans could even step into the band's world with a Beatles edition of the wildly popular video game Rock Band, bringing the magic to a new generation. But trouble loomed behind the scenes. In February 2010, reports surfaced that EMI, the record label that had shepherded the Beatles to stardom, was struggling financially and shopping Abbey Road Studios, the very birthplace of their most iconic recordings. The thought sent shockwaves through fans and historians alike. In the dramatic move, the British Department for Culture, Media and Sport stepped in, declaring Abbey Road a protected historic landmark, ensuring its survival. EMI later revealed it would keep ownership of the legendary studio, but would seek investors to breathe new life into the hallowed halls where rock history was made. The Beatles' story wasn't just music, it was a saga etched in time, their echo continuing to ripple through generations. Now let's talk about the personal lives of members of the Beatles. Let's start with Paul McCartney. Before the world knew his name, Paul was just a teenager in Liverpool falling in love for the first time. Her name was Dorothy Roan. They met at the Cosby Club in 1959. Young, idealistic, and drawn together by music, they stayed together for over 2 years. But behind the scenes, cracks formed. Dot once said Paul had a need to control. He picked out her clothes, her makeup, and even told her to grow her hair like Brigitte Bardot.
I like women just looking good. I like the kind of things you see on Dynasty and stuff. I mean, they look okay.
Their romance nearly led to marriage until heartbreak struck. Dot suffered a miscarriage, and soon after, Paul moved on. Then came Jane Asher. They met in April 1963, backstage at the Royal Albert Hall. She was poised, artistic, and from a prominent London family. Paul moved into her family home, and for 5 years, they were inseparable. But fame, temptation, and another woman, Francie Swartz, came between them. Jane found out, the engagement ended. Paul's life took another turn when he met Linda Eastman, an American photographer with a quiet strength. They married in 1969. Together they raised 4 children, Linda's daughter Heather, plus Mary, Stella, and James. It was a solid, lasting partnership, cut short only by Linda's death from breast cancer in 1998. She was 56.
Linda died. Did you actually stop writing it? Or stop writing altogether? Did you kind of go through a period of
Yeah,
just...
I did. You know, it was just such a sad event for me and the family.
In 2002, Paul married again, this time to Heather Mills, a former model and anti-landmine activist. Their daughter, Beatrice Millie, was born the following year, but the marriage quickly unraveled. By 2006, they were separated. The divorce, finalized in 2008, was bitter and public.
And it was an incredible result in the end to secure mine and daughter's future and that of all the charities that I...
Then came Nancy Chevelle, a New Yorker, 18 years his junior. She and Paul had known each other for 2 decades, both owning homes in the Hamptons. In 2011, they married quietly at Mary LeBone Town Hall, the same place where he'd wed Linda all those years ago. Today, McCartney is 81, with a net worth of over $1.2 billion. He's not just one of the most influential artists of all time, he's the most successful musician in history. Now, let's talk about George Harrison's personal life, which was quite troubling. In the mid-60s, LSD cracked open something in George, a spiritual hunger.
The notorious wonder drug LSD. It was, we didn't know we were having it. John and I had this drug.
But one trip through San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury changed everything. He peered into the world of acid dreams and saw decay. He put a drop under the microscope. It looked like old rope. That was it. He swore off it for good. Instead, he turned to Hinduism.
To be an outspoken atheist and a hypocrite. And after all my life, I've been brought up, well, they tried to bring me up as a Catholic.
He became a lifelong vegetarian, embracing Eastern philosophy with quiet intensity. He never chased the spotlight, never married again after Pattie Boyd, and lived his later years in near seclusion. When he died at 58, he left behind a $400 million legacy and a sense of peace few rock stars ever find. And then Ringo Starr. He met Maureen Cox the same week he joined the Beatles.
Well, this was supposed to be it, but it didn't work.
Well, for how long was it supposed to be?
Well, I have to start work on Monday, so...
They married in 1965 and had 3 kids. Fame followed, but so did the chaos. Affairs, alcohol, and turmoil led to divorce in 1975. Maureen passed away in 1994, but Ringo found love again. On the set of Caveman, he met actress Barbara Bach. They married in 1981 and stayed strong.
So you've been married for 38 years.
Yeah, I went to LAX to check in on a plane to go to Mexico, and Barbara was on the other side of the counter with her boyfriend. I fell in love with her, and then she tortured me for 2 months, and we've been together ever since.
Ringo, now 84, lives by the motto, peace and love. A vegetarian who meditates daily, he's allergic to garlic and onions. Hard rock exterior, gentle soul inside. With 8 grandkids and 1 great-grandchild, he's built a quiet empire worth $350 million. Now, John Lennon. Well, his personal life, turbulent and tragic. First, Cynthia and their son Julian.
I could have fought, I could have battled before the divorce from John, but I knew that that wouldn't do any good.
Then Yoko Ono, his soulmate, muse, and partner in avant-garde art. They endured a split, but reunited, welcoming son Sean.
John and Yoko had planned to wed elsewhere, but had been unable to do so and were advised to come to Gibraltar.
Lennon had finally found peace, but it didn't last. On December 8, 1980, everything changed. Outside his New York apartment, he was shot by a disturbed fan. The world went silent. He was just 40. His legacy, though, timeless, worth $800 million, but emotionally priceless. Together, the Beatles shaped music forever. They gave us poetry, power, heartbreak, and harmony. And for that, we're eternally grateful.
You're talking that way, they laugh